So, welcome to today's episode of Autonomous PostgreSQL, where I'm joined by Peter Zaitsev, a legendary figure in the open source database space and the co-founder of Percona. Peter has been Peter's had decades of experience scaling high performance infrastructure, and he's one of the industry's foremost experts on database optimization, cloud architecture, and open source ecosystems. Our path have crossed quite a few times in the Postgres space. And today, as workloads become more and more complex, a shift towards self-tuning, automation, that has moved from convenience to necessity. Peter has spoken at Build DEF CON earlier in this year, asking a good question. Are we ready for self-driving databases? And at FOSS Asia, Peter, I think you discussed the AI DBA. So thanks for joining us today and sharing your view on autonomous or self-driving Postgres.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for so warm welcome.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions to elucidate this topic. So first, autonomous or self-driving databases, they're a big topic. You've spoken about it, as I said. Where do you see the big opportunity in design and tuning and maintenance tasks? Where do you think we're going to see this first?
Well, I think the opportunity is everywhere, right? Because I think what we are seeing, if you look, is when it comes to AI, it becomes better and better, uh, replacing and augmenting human in everything which has to do with this kind of like electronic world, as finding bugs, writing code, hacking, you name it. And so I think the biggest impact will, in many cases, be team related, where we are going to look at where are we going to let people AI in our organizations, right? Are we going to, for example, let AI to write the code? Well, if we do, then that's where impact is going to harm, right? Are we going to say, hey, you know what? We believe what AI is better than humans designing database schema, right? Well, then that's where AI is going to happen. And of course, you will say, well, not quite. There are some edge cases where humans are still better, right? And that's true, right? That's why I'm saying that's team related, because that also implies that can be the area kind of related.
Yeah, I really like that idea of team related to really say, hey, there's a bunch of different opportunities and depends on what you have and what you need, and that's where AI can help. So, do you see AI replace the DBA or augment the DBA, or will it allow more DevOps teams, which increasingly don't have DBA skills, right, and have no clue about a database to be successful, or where do you think it's going to play most?
Well, yes, I think the answer is both here, right? Because if you think about this, there are a lot of teams right now which do not have a dedicated DBA role. They have some people who may or may not have some experience with databases, and they often, you know, took bad decision, cause downtime, data loss, security incidents, and so on and so forth, right? And I think those people will do much better being augmented by AI. Whatever we call it, like AI DBA, AI SRE, right? There could be a lot of terminology used by that, but people working with databases will be augmented to DBA to be more productive. Now, I think in this case, as it came with a database or cloud services, right, or like the decade right now, right, we can see what there have been a reduction of people having a DBA role, right? A lot more organizations, more teams are getting by without DBA, right? And I think with AI, that will be pushed even more so. So in some cases, DBAs would be replaced. But I think for the most important kind of mission critical workloads, it will be quite a while before we can say, hey, you know what, we are just going to completely outsource all our decisions to AI overlords, right? And so we'll still have human in the loop taking the most important decisions with very significant AI help.
Okay, I think that's so the singularity has not arrived yet, at least for the DBA.
Well, yes, and I think it's kind of very interesting, right? Because if you see, it's kind of uh, like I can compare that like to autonomous cars, which I know
Hmm.
I did, right? And I think it was interesting. Maybe around like 2010, there was like prediction. Oh my gosh, it's almost there. In 2015, like everybody will have autonomous AI. It's easy problem to solve. Like it's there. There probably will be no cars produced without kind of self-driving capability by 2020. Now in 2026, right? We kind of are a lot less ambitious in this case, right? We're saying, well, you know what? It has been 15 years. Yes, we have some autonomous taxis operating in some restricted regions, right? But we are not saying what those kind of completely autonomous car which can go anywhere in the world is coming in the next few years. I think the same has been coming for AGI, right? There was clinics that's like, oh my gosh, AGI is out there in 2 years, maybe kind of 5 years ago, right? And now you can see that kind of has been sort of moved, right? We are talking about agentic future more than AGI, right? And so on and so forth, right? Because I think it became to the recognition what that kind of speed of complete human replacing. Maybe it's not as easy and as close, right, as it looked even 2 years ago.
I agree. So if I go back a little bit to what you said before about the team and augmenting skills, um, if we compare, let's say, tools, AI tools that change things in the database, AutoTune was one, DBTune is one that does that, right? Automatically adjust parameters. And then there's others, let's say Azure's autonomous tuning tool that make recommendations. How do you see that balance, and especially how does that fit in with infrastructure as a code?
Okay, well, I think it is very interesting, right? Because when we talk about the changes and recommendations, right, you also have to understand that not all of them are created equal. Some of them are more safe, some of
Mhm.
them are not so safe. Right, like for example, in the database, typically there are a lot of ways how you can reduce, for example, durability to optimize performance. Right, you can look at it and say, well, you know what, your cluster is kind of slow because you're using synchronous replication.
Mhm.
Maybe stop doing that stupid stuff. Right. Well, yes, now it runs a lot faster, but of course it's not equal. Right, and that is where we need some other input, typically by the human, to understand, okay, what is very important for a business, right? How to balance those things, right? There are some other things, like for example, I would say while index changes, right? That often comes with trade-offs. You can have certain things are going to be faster, certain things are going to be slower. What is more important for you, right? And maybe the fact is what you sped up by 10 times this query, which runs, once a month, right? And nobody cares if it runs in a 3 hours, right? But you slow down their ingestion or some other activities which has to happen in real time is a problem for business, right? That is something which is very, very hard for AI to know, and it needs guidance, right? The other specific problem I would like to highlight and kind of also a higher level of risk is their query rewrites, right? Because while some query transformations, they can be easy, like more significant ones are much more complicated because in general, right, to say, hey, here are two queries, are they equal or not, right, in their result set, that is a very hard scientific problem, right, which I don't think have a, complete solution as of yet. Right. So, well, if you have AI and it says, hey, you know what, this is what a query looks like, and I rewrote your 5-page query to another 4-page query, do you know if you will provide exactly the same results in all the cases? Well, maybe not. And in some cases, you don't care, right? If it's, we have a lot of, I would say this, social media-like stuff, right? There are things that kind of fast and loose, right? If you look at, have a little bit less cat videos and more dog videos, nobody dies. But there are also a lot of other cases where results has to be, exact,
Mhm.
right? And I think that is goes back to that case when I said AI use will be different depending on environments more in the cases where we can afford going fast and loose, and more conservative when it would be real money or people lives or other important
Mhm.
things at risk.
Yeah. Okay, that makes good sense. So now we've talked a lot about the DBA and the developer side. How about the analyst or user side? So Percona's Osada, if I understand that correctly, is
Mhm.
more focused on the analyst accessing the database and getting help with, yeah, with working with the database. What do you think of that
Well,
perspective?
yeah, I think this is kind of very interesting, right? And to me, that kind of goes also like maybe like a parallel track a little bit in the development side. Because if you think about, how development evolved, right? Hey, you know what? We had, something people wrote and code, and then assembly language came about, and then some languages, like C, and then kind of high-level programming languages, no code frameworks, and so on and so forth, which allows more and more users kind of to create the stuff, right? The same kind of goes with a kind of data analysis, right, if you will, right? You would need to, figure things out kind of in a complicated way than what now, like many decades ago, SQL was created, which you say, hey, that's kind of almost like a human language. Everybody who has a PhD in mathematics can go and write a SQL language. It's so freaking easy. Well, then you figure out there are more than 10 computers in the whole world, right? And then people who are wanting to work with data, they don't necessarily have a PhDs or in specialized math degrees, and then SQL becomes too complicated for them, right? And again, they are kind of, going in that, dashboard in natural language processing, right? And I think that is there. Of course, AI is already there, right? I think for a lot of organizations, right, you look at, just go to some sort of AI framework to ask some reports, not write SQL queries. But again, that is where this kind of important goes, right? Because a lot of the questions, what we ask in this case, we're kind of, if the data is not correct, it's not going to be critical, especially considering a lot of organizations have a lot of garbage in their database to begin with.
Mhm.
So exact answer is kind of not possible. Does AI adds kind of some maybe more mistakes compared to what their data quality is and what some junior analyst abilities in writing SQL queries are? Maybe yes, maybe no. If you look at again the most important cases for data analysis, right? That's where you still say, hey, we want to make sure everything is controlled by increasingly in many cases by AI, but probably with human oversight, from data quality to quality of reports. And again, in a lot of cases, I think that people trust with any technology comes with delay, right? You can probably think about like an everything, like people were very much afraid to buy things on internet, right, when it first came about, right, or similar things like that, right? Trust comes with this stuff, and I think right now, at least I think there's some organizations which overtrust to AI, and I think we'll probably have some, increasing number of incidences like, oh. I trusted AI too much and I fucked up, right? Versus some other organizations don't trust AI enough at this point,
Mhm.
right? Where AI can help them to do better if they would trust it more, but they're not ready for that yet.
Good. Well, thank you, Peter. That was really interesting. Great insights. So, thanks again for sharing your perspectives with me and our audience. And thanks a lot.
Okay, so thank you for having me.